Some moments don't ask permission, they just arrive to expose truth. It was one of those moments. The afternoon light stretched lazily over the skyline of Monarch Hill, a district so polished it shimmered like a dream. At the rooftop of the Ivory Terrace, a restaurant where contracts were toasted and reputations were made, something quiet was about to shift forever. Maya Evans stepped out of her emerald-colored rideshare, the wind catching the hem of her tunic as she moved with calm intention. Her natural curls were twisted into a neat low bun, a few soft tendrils dancing against her cheeks. She wore tailored ivory trousers and a sun-gold blouse. Her earrings gleamed in the light, bold but not loud, like her. She hadn't come to win anything, just to eat, or so she hoped. The message had come 6 days earlier. Let's catch up, no pressure, just lunch. Caleb, her ex. A year ago, she'd been all in, loving him with her whole self. But some people don't know how to hold that kind of woman. The problem wasn't how much she loved. It was how deeply she loved her purpose, too. They broke up the night he said, "You treat your work like it's your real relationship." That was the last time she ever slept beside him. Since then, Maya had grown, not in public, but in silence. She now led brand storytelling at Brightline Agency, known for its cultural campaigns and national civic projects. She didn't just create ads, she helped brands speak with soul. She lived alone in Stonebridge Quarters, a leafy mid-rise community, where birdsong met coffee shops and young founders worked out of balconies. Her life was quiet, rich, intentional. So when Caleb messaged her, Maya imagined perhaps he'd changed. He hadn't. The host at Ivory Terrace guided her past white umbrellas and polished cutlery. The scent of cardamom lamb floated through the air like a promise. But the moment Maya spotted Caleb, she felt it in her stomach. This wasn't lunch. This was theater. He sat among 3 others, all white, all pretending not to care too much. Their clothes screamed casual confidence. Their sunglasses did more talking than their eyes. Caleb stood halfway, smirked like an old joke. "Well, look who actually came," Maya smiled gently. "You invited me." He gestured toward a seat like he was offering charity. "Everyone, this is Maya. We used to date. She's in branding or something." A woman in a designer scarf offered a lazy nod. Another sipped her drink without a glance. Maya sucked, posture perfect. "I work in strategic brand storytelling and cultural campaigns." "Right," Caleb chuckled. "She's on this big independent woman kick, freelance life, passion projects, the usual hashtags." The group laughed, softly but clearly. Maya reached for her mint water. Her hand didn't shake. She'd been through harder. The conversation flowed. Politics, vacations, jokes, but Caleb kept bringing it back to her, carefully disguised. "Stabs. She once canceled a beach trip to write a proposal," he said, smirking. "I guess spreadsheets meant more than I did." Another round of laughter. Her smile thinned. They didn't know. Caleb didn't know. She had rebuilt after him. Not for revenge, but for herself. She had cried without an audience, grown without applause, and someone else in the restaurant had noticed. At a quiet corner, sipping iced lemongrass tea behind gold-rimmed glasses, sat a man who had been listening. His name was Troy Lennox, founder of Lennox Tech Media, tech disruptor, self-made billionaire before 35. If his name came up in a room, heads turned. Troy Lennox didn't often speak unless he meant to shift something. And he had been listening, every word. When the server brought the check, Caleb leaned back like a man proud of his shadow. "No worries," he said, slipping his platinum card into the check folder. "Lunch is on me. I've got things covered." Some of U.S. aren't still figuring life out. That was the final jab. Maya blinked once. She breathed in. But before she could answer, Troy Lennox rose to his feet. Silence fell over the terrace, as if the air itself paused. He walked slowly over to the table, calm but firm, placing one gentle hand on Maya's shoulder, then extended the other too. "Caleb, forgive me," he said, his voice low. "I try to mind my business. But I overheard your conversation, and I wanted to say something." Caleb's face wrinkled in confusion. "Sorry. Have we met?" Troy smiled, warm but piercing. "I'm Troy Lennox. Maya's firm has been working with Lennox Tech for the last 6 months. Her insights helped guide our third quarter rollout. Honestly, the campaign wouldn't have worked without her." He looked back at Maya. There was light in his eyes now. "I didn't think you had time for lunch meetings this week. Guess I'm lucky." One of Caleb's friends leaned in, whispering fast. Realization rippled through the group. Troy gave Maya a nod. "Let's touch base soon, especially for the Paris expansion session." And then he turned, leaving the air heavy behind him. Maya folded her napkin with a calm hand. She stood, met Caleb's eyes one last time, then said, "Kindness is free, but some people still can't afford it." And with that, she left. The sun caught her earrings as she walked. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. By the next morning, her phone buzzed with new messages, not from him, but from people who had once ignored her emails. From recruiters, from investors, from silent watchers who had finally seen, not because Troy Lennox gave her power, but because she already had it. And the world had just been reminded. Troy Lennox wasn't just rich, he was a signal. When he spoke, markets moved. When he nodded, partnerships solidified. When he noticed someone, others didn't just watch, they followed. So when he said Maya Evans's name aloud in a crowded restaurant, like a praise offered not out of charity, but clear-eyed respect, the ripple didn't stop at that table. It moved through circles she hadn't yet entered. But Maya, she wasn't thinking about any of that. Not yet. That morning, as sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of her modest apartment, Maya sat curled near the window, hands wrapped around a cup of ginger tea that had long gone cold. The steam had faded, but her thoughts still swirled. Her place was nothing extravagant, just a 2-room flat in Stonebridge Quarters, but it was hers. Alive with climbing plants and clay pots, books stacked beneath a vision board peppered with scribbles and hopes. Her laptop sat open, a folder of pitch decks at its side. She hadn't slept much. Not from worry, from the weight of what had happened. The night before, she had walked out of the ivory terrace with her head high, her words calm but cutting. Yet once she'd closed the door to her apartment, her chest had tightened. Not from pain, she didn't ache for Caleb anymore, but from something she hadn't felt in years, the sharp relief of being truly seen. She hadn't cried, but she had exhaled the kind of breath you only release when you've been carrying invisible burdens for too long. And across the city, Caleb Foster sat at his own kitchen table, coffee untouched, phone in hand, and everything strangely quiet. The group chat with his friends, the same ones who had laughed with him at lunch, was now ghost town silent. No memes. No banter. No "you killed it" texts. Even the woman who'd sat beside him at the restaurant, the one with the designer bag and disinterested stare, hadn't replied to his last message, or the one before that. But the noise was still there, on the internet. Because someone, it turned out, had filmed a moment Troy Lennox stood up. Just 30 seconds, no backstory, no editing. Just a billionaire recognizing the brilliance of a woman Caleb had tried to make small. The clip had gone viral overnight. Now Caleb sat scrolling through comments, stomach in a slow, sick twist. "This is how you dismantle casual cruelty. Bro got humbled on a Tuesday. The grace on that woman. 10/10. Imagine mocking her and not realizing her boss was 2 feet away." He slammed his phone face down on the table. Muttered to no one, it wasn't even that serious. But even as the words left his lips, he felt the sting of truth under them. It was because Maya had never needed to raise her voice. She had always held power in poise, and all Troy Lennox did was uncover what had been there the whole time. Later that same week, Maya walked through the glass doors of Lennox and Morris, a quiet confidence in her step. The meeting had been on the books for 3 weeks, an ongoing collaboration around urban civic engagement. But today, everything felt shifted. The receptionist greeted her not with the usual glance, but with full attention. "Good morning, Ms. Evans," she said, standing slightly straighter. An assistant she didn't recognize approached before she even sat. "Would you prefer sparkling or still water?" She smiled softly. "Sparkling, please." When Troy Lennox entered the conference room, he didn't shake her hand like a stranger. He grasped it with warmth, not too firm, not too light, just aware. "Glad you made it," he said, then leaned in slightly, eyes bright with that same easy calm he carried at lunch. "Hope I didn't interrupt anything the other day." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You didn't interrupt. You flipped the table." He laughed, a deep, grounded sound. "Figured it was time someone did." They got to work. Data, proposals, projections, but somewhere between the third bullet point and a map of expansion zones, Troy paused. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I've worked with a lot of strategists, smart people, big ideas. But you think in layers, you don't just market. You anchor, you give brands meaning, not just momentum." Maya looked down for a beat, touched. "Thank you," she said quietly. Then added, "Truthfully, I've been building in silence. For a long time. Most people don't notice." Troy nodded. "They're noticing now." That night, Maya walked home beneath the honey-colored glow of the street lamps. Her heels tapped gently along cobblestone, rhythm steady, head lifted. The city pulsed, but it no longer intimidated her. She had once bent herself to fit into rooms that weren't built for her, laughed at the right time, softened her voice, smiled smaller. Not anymore. Now she moved like someone who no longer needed permission. Not because Troy Lennox had said her name, but because she had already earned it. Long before anyone cared. Because she had chosen presence over noise. And someone powerful had simply turned up the volume. By the next week, her inbox was a different world. Not just filled, flooded. Opportunities, yes, but also apologies. From old coworkers who once interrupted her in meetings. From marketing leads who had ignored her proposals. From execs who hadn't replied for months, now writing as if they'd never looked away. And then, one short lowercase message. No greeting, no punctuation. Just, "Hey, didn't mean for it to come out like that. Hope you're good, congrats on everything, Caleb." She didn't reply. Not because she was angry. Because she didn't need to. The thing about rising in silence is, by the time they notice, you're already too far ahead to look back. A few nights later, Maya stood on a rooftop terrace at a networking event. A drink in her hand, the city stretching wide and endless beneath her. The skyline didn't loom anymore. It felt like canvas. A woman approached, blazer sharp, lipstick perfect, her walk like purpose wrapped in heels. "I've been meaning to meet you," she said, offering a hand. "You're Maya, right? From the Lennox campaign?" Maya smiled. "Depends who's asking," the woman chuckled. "Vice president. At Norwood Group, we've been watching that rollout. It's clean, quietly powerful. You're onto something." Maya nodded, measured. Compliments were fine. Impact was better. "We'd love to explore a partnership," the woman continued. "Urban innovation is the future, and your signature is all over that space." Maya took a sip of her drink, then said simply, "Let's talk Monday." She had learned the art of not rushing to impress. Meanwhile, Caleb sat quietly in the back of a different room, not the room where the buzz lived now. In every meeting, whispers followed him. Not respect, recognition, not of value but of that video. He thought once again about reaching out, but what would he even say? Because Maya had become someone unreachable to him now. Not because she had risen too high, but because she had grown beyond the version of her he once tried to control. What Caleb Foster failed to realize was that when he mocked Maya Evans in public, the world didn't just hear it, the world responded. Back at Lennox and Morris, things were changing. Maya was still technically an external consultant. That's what her contract said. But in practice, she had become something far more essential. It started quietly. One strategy session here. One late-night brainstorm there. But soon, Troy Lennox, ever observant, ever intentional, began pulling her into deeper waters. Meetings that shaped entire campaigns, global outreach efforts, government partnerships, multi-city expansion models. Not because she asked, because she earned it. One afternoon, in a sunlit boardroom with half-eaten pastries and open laptops, a young analyst leaned toward Troy during a pause and whispered, "What made you bring her in this close?" Troy didn't answer right away. He just glanced across the table at Maya, who was reviewing a community impact metric with calm intensity. Then he said, almost to himself, "She sees what others don't, and she walks like she's not trying to prove anything, only protect something." Maya didn't react. She didn't need to. Because real power doesn't always interrupt. Sometimes it just sits at the head of the table and listens. What no one in that room knew, not yet, was that Maya was already building something bigger than herself. Something long-term, something lasting. She wasn't chasing visibility. She was building legacy. In the quiet corners of her calendar, in late-night Zooms and handwritten notes passed between trusted colleagues, Maya was assembling a coalition. Not a startup, not a club, a force. Women of color in strategy, branding, tech and public policy. Not polished, not perfect, but brilliant. They met in back rooms and breakout cafes. They shared data, compared salaries, reviewed contracts too. Make sure no one was being undercut or overlooked. Maya called it the quiet room, because that's where most of them had started, in silence, in the background. And now, they were learning to make noise, but in all the right places. One evening, after a long day of back-to-back meetings, Maya arrived home and found a bouquet resting outside her apartment door. White lily and eucalyptus, no name, no branding. Just a small note on cream cardstock, to the one who redefined grace. She didn't smile because of who it might have come from. She smiled because of what it said. She hadn't planned on becoming a symbol. She had only wanted to survive with dignity. But sometimes, dignity is the symbol. And in a city obsessed with volume, Maya had chosen something different. She had chosen presence. While others raced for screens and hashtags, Maya had stayed focused on the work. She wasn't trying to ride anyone's wave. She was the current now. But not everyone celebrates a woman like Maya, because when a black woman enters a room with strength and softness, some people don't know whether to honor her or try to use her. It became clear one Thursday morning when an email slid into her inbox with an enthusiastic subject line. Keynote invitation, Women in Business Rising. The sender was Damian Cross, head of a local startup incubator. Maya had seen his name float around on panels, tags, and newsletters. Seemed harmless, eager, even. His message was dripping with praise. Your story is powerful. You carry yourself with such poise. We'd love you to headline our next summit. Young founders would gain so much from your presence. Also heard you're close with Troy Lennox. We're huge fans of his work. At first glance, it looked like another speaking opportunity. She received dozens lately. But something about Damian's tone felt off, too hungry, too polished. Like someone who rehearsed sincerity without believing in it. So Maya did what she always did. She researched. And the findings didn't take long. Old threads. Whispers on LinkedIn. Blog posts buried under search. Pages Former interns and junior staff describing experiences of being brushed aside, spoken over, and in one case, having their ideas repackaged under someone else's name. The stories weren't loud. They were careful, measured, familiar. She'd seen this pattern before. Still, Maya didn't react. She replied politely, "Thank you for the invitation. Could you share which other women are on the panel and what specific causes the event supports?" Damien replied quickly, a blur of diverse voices, inclusive, innovation, and name-dropping a few partner companies that hadn't confirmed. That was enough. This wasn't about celebrating her work. This was about leveraging her image as clout, as credibility, as cover. They didn't care what she believed in. They cared how she looked standing on their stage. And Maya? She didn't do hollow. A few days passed. Then another message from Damien. This time more urgent. "Hey Maya, just a heads up, we're already promoting your name on the flyer. Let us know if you need anything for the event." She hadn't agreed. She hadn't signed anything, and yet here was her face, being borrowed without permission. But Maya had learned that not all confrontation requires noise. Sometimes all it takes is clarity. She drafted a short response. "Hi Damien, I was surprised to see my name associated with your event without confirmed participation or consent. I support platforms that reflect integrity behind the scenes, not just optics on stage. Please remove my name and image from all materials immediately. Regards, Maya Evans." And then, just to make sure the message hit home, she CC'd her legal counsel and Troy Lennox. Just in case. By the next morning, silence, no follow-up. No name dropping, no more faux enthusiasm. By noon, the flyer was scrubbed, her name erased from the site and socials. Just like that, she reminded them, her presence wasn't to be used. It was to be respected. Later that week, Troy texted her, "Saw the email, clean. You handled that like a CEO." Maya saw it, smiled, but didn't respond. Not out of arrogance, out of focus. She didn't need to be reposted again. She didn't need a new round of praise. She had work to do. At her next quiet room gathering, she shared the story, not as gossip, but as guidance. "Power," she said, her voice low and steady, "isn't just what you build, it's what you don't let others borrow." Some women nodded, a few scribbled it down. Others just sat quietly, letting it land like truth on soil. "They'll try to wrap their agenda in compliments," she continued. "Learn to unwrap them." By now, Maya's presence had begun to change rooms. Executives paused before speaking when she entered. Brands waited to hear her perspective before launching. Young women studied her videos the way athletes studied tape. And Caleb? He had faded into the background, exactly where he belonged. The city had shifted. But maybe it was Maya who had. It was a warm Tuesday afternoon when she saw him again. Not at an award show, not at a conference, not in the buzz of business life, but at the most ordinary place imaginable, a little corner cafe just off the main business district. Maya Evans had just finished a mentoring session with two of her interns, bright, eager minds from her quiet room circle. They were young, sharp, and ambitious, asking all the right questions and listening even harder. She'd left them with handshakes and words of encouragement, their notebooks scribbled full, their eyes lit with purpose. Now walking into the corner cafe on Maple and 4th, she felt centered, calm, grounded in a way only people who've weathered storms without breaking truly know. She moved like someone who no longer needed to explain why she belonged. The ground itself seemed to shift for her, recognizing her quiet authority. She wasn't chasing acknowledgement. Her presence was her proof. As she stepped in to order her coffee, her eyes passed over a few crowded tables, and then stopped. There he was, Caleb Foster. He sat alone near the window, hunched just enough to look like he was trying not to be noticed. scrolling on his phone with the frantic motion of someone searching for anything to distract him. The easy confidence that used to pour from him like expensive cologne now hung limp. His shoulders drooped. His expression looked small. Their eyes met, only for a second. But that was enough. He jolted up, too quickly, knocking his chair back with a scraping sound. People glanced, then returned to their cups. "Maya," he said, stunned. Wow, she didn't flinch, didn't raise an eyebrow. She simply said softly, "Hey." Caleb took a step closer, stuffing his hands in his jacket pockets, awkward and exposed in a way he never used to be. "You look different," he said with a half smile, calm, solid. Maya gave a slight nod, neither dismissive nor inviting. "Just real. I've been meaning to reach out," he continued. "I saw the Paris expansion, the new community fund you started, and everything with Troy Lennox, that moment at the restaurant. It was something." His voice trailed off, waiting for her to smile, to acknowledge him, to give him something, a flicker of approval, maybe even forgiveness. Maya looked at him steadily. "It's been a good season," she said simply. Silence folded itself between them. Not awkward, just thick with things unspoken. After a moment, Caleb's voice broke again, low and heavy. "I didn't mean to hurt you. Back then." Maya's gaze didn't harden. It didn't soften either. It just held him. "I know," she said. Then after a beat, her voice clearer, "But you did." Caleb's shoulders dropped further. He looked down at the floor, at the tile, at anything. "But her, if I could take it back, you don't have to." Her voice, though gentle, stopped him, "Because it led me here." She offered him a smile, not smug, not smugly victorious. Just peaceful. Like someone who had come through fire, not with ashes, but with light. "You were a chapter," she added. "I've written the rest." And with that, she turned toward the counter to place her order. Behind her, Caleb stood motionless. Not out of shame, but out of realization. Realization that the woman he once talked over, joked about, diminished, was now someone he could no longer reach. Not because she'd risen too far, but because she had finally outgrown the version of herself he used to believe in. When Maya stepped out onto the sidewalk, the sun caught her earrings just so, glinting like a quiet crown. As she walked past a bookstore, a woman in a blue headwrap slowed beside her. "Excuse me," she said, voice warm. "Are you Maya Evans? From the Lennox campaign?" Maya paused, the hint of a smile still on her lips. "I am. My niece follows you. She's just launched her own social enterprise. You've inspired her, more than you probably know." Maya's smile deepened. She thanked the woman, exchanged a few kind words, and kept walking with that same steady rhythm she had mastered, a rhythm the city now seemed to match, step for step. She didn't need to turn around. She didn't need to watch the door behind her or check whether Caleb was still watching. The world was watching now. And this time, they weren't just seeing a woman rise, they were seeing a woman already risen. In a world that rewards noise, true power often speaks in silence. You don't have to prove your worth to those who refuse. To see it, just keep building. Because when your time comes, the world won't just hear your name. It will respect your legacy. If this story moved you, taught you, or reminded you of your own power, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that uplift, inspire, and reveal the quiet strength within us all.